Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome to your detailed forecast update for the 21st of December 2024. We have a lot to get through once again in this forecast update, starting things off by recapping on the tremendous rainfall and forecasting the floods that are about to happen across the central and the far northern Queensland coastline. We'll talk about the thunderstorm risk across the southeast of Queensland as well, a detailed Christmas weather forecast for the entirety of the nation plus all of the major cities, and tropical lows expected in both the Coral Sea and the West Australian waters adjacent to WA later on in the forecast period. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things this morning over in the central and the far northern Queensland coastline. So they have had a couple of days of very heavy rainfall over there, but the good news is the rainfall is now beginning to ease off. But we do have this tropical low now still spinning up into the Coral Sea. I'm going to get into the forecast for this system in just a second, but just in terms of the recap from the rainfall heading from north to south, I mean, it's been all around some tremendous rainfall accumulations. The Atherton tableland's picking up around 100 to 130 millimetres over the past 3 days, probably a little bit more as you get closer towards the coastline as well, and further towards the south. Ravenshoe might have picked up a little bit more than that. Cairns, I believe, has picked up about 250 millimetres, which was much more than the expected, and that was very much helped by a 174 millimetre accumulation to the 9 a.m. yesterday. Along the coastline, Innisfail and Tully pretty much bang on with a forecast there, about 250 millimetres as well. Cardwell and Ingham on both days bang on with a forecast once again. It was really quite an easy system to forecast in terms of how much rainfall was going to be coming through, especially with how it ended up playing out. About 300 millimetres down there, give or take, probably a little bit less actually. Cardwell and Ingham didn't pick up as much rainfall as we were initially expecting. Townsville picked up a boatload. In fact, there's a little town just outside of Townsville. It's about 30 kilometres towards the northeast. I've just forgotten how to pronounce it. I've forgotten the name of the town actually, and they've picked up 346 millimetres to the 9 a.m. in the past 22 hours right now, and I believe they picked up another 70 millimetres yesterday. So peak rainfall accumulations outside of Townsville were about 450 millimetres. Going further down the coastline as well, down to Proserpine, rainfall accumulations over the past 3 days were also around 450 millimetres, with the highest totals from personal weather stations in excess of 500 millimetres. I don't think we got anything higher than about 550 or 600. If we have, then please do let me know in the comment section down below, but at this time I think about 500 to 550 millimetres was the highest rainfall accumulations that we have seen. But places that don't typically pick up huge rainfall accumulations, such as Hamilton Island, I mean, it's not too common that they get more than 100 millimetres, just considering the coastal location there. The rainfall just kind of blows over Hamilton Island. They've picked up 150 millimetres over the past 22 hours, and then about 100 millimetres in the 24 hours before it. So some very significant rainfall accumulations have been picked up on some of the reefs as well, adjacent to the Queensland coastline, and that's because of just the very weak winds that this tropical low has. So the rainfall's not really rotating over them as rapidly as it normally would from a tropical weather event or a tropical cyclone, and as such those rainfall accumulations are quite a lot heavier than what they normally are, just because the rain is a lot slower moving. You can see around the centre of this system as well, still some light to moderate falls extending across into the Queensland coastline. Around the centre of this system it's more sort of moderate to heavy at times, especially up from thunderstorms across the north and the northeast of the system. The rainfall rates up there are locally intense in fact, but for the most part the rainfall now beginning to ease out of the central Queensland area. It's well and truly eased out of the far northern reaches of Queensland, but for the most part now it is just now starting to clear out of the central Queensland area. Mackay's picked up a very healthy 250 to 300 millimetres over the past 3 days as well, slightly more as you get to the mountains adjacent to Mackay, and especially as you get further north up towards Proserpine. So rainfall there has been very decent. A couple of light showers still expected to linger throughout the course of today. And just in terms of the rainfall forecast, very briefly throughout the course of today, you can see this forecast here is a pretty big load of boogies, just considering that we're not seeing it locally intense rainfall right now along the Queensland coastline. This system is a lot further offshore than what the forecast is suggesting. In terms of the rainfall, it is remaining light across the central Queensland coastline, and not much is expected as you get into the far northern regions as well until later this afternoon, when we're expecting a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak out there, and there is a chance of some locally heavy falls later on this afternoon and evening around the Cairns area, especially inland out towards Atherton. I think Atherton, Mareeba, those sort of areas could pick up some or a couple of very good thunderstorms tonight, and that could just add to the rainfall accumulations that they're having there. But yeah, certainly a significant flooding problem. A lot of rivers got right up above the moderate flooding alerts there. Starting to fall now. Minor flooding is still occurring in about 4 rivers in the far northern areas of Queensland, about 6 rivers in the central Queensland coastline area. So the rivers are still flowing quite hard this morning, especially around Townsville, so make sure you're taking extra care on the roads. And if you do live in a flood-prone area, all it takes is another shower or thunderstorm, which is possible, especially into the far northern reaches of Queensland. Queensland to make those rivers rise significantly again. So again, make sure you are taking extra care and extra precautions. Absolutely no playing in the floodwaters as well, either whatsoever today, because this is a very significant amount of rainfall that has fallen. It'd be fantastic if Windy had a map that included rainfall accumulations over the last, say, a 3-day period. That'd be absolutely fantastic and very helpful to make these videos. But all in all, some very healthy rainfall accumulations have been reported, which has been just simply fantastic to see. It's a great start to the wet season up into the far northern reaches of Queensland. And the drought, I mean, there really wasn't any drought, but they were struggling a little bit on rainfall. But you can see now substantially above average soil moisture values here, about 3 to 4 times the normal. Those will drop off throughout the course of this week, of course, as they normally do, but very wet soils up here, which is, again, really fantastic to see. And I imagine that's making a lot of people, especially on rural properties, very, very happy this morning. In terms of the forecast of this system, I mean, for the forecast, we've got to take a look at what it's doing right now, and you can see it actually doesn't look that bad. It's actually quite an impressive looking tropical low here. You can actually make sense of what's going on, and because it is a really small system, it actually has a decent shot of intensifying into a tropical cyclone. It is something that I would say if this system had another 48 hours of premium conditions in the Coral Sea to make the most of. Unfortunately, though, it looks like this system will be on its way out sometime in the next 6 to 12 hours. If we play through a 6-hour satellite loop of this system, you can see it's been blowing up some very impressive thunderstorms, and only very recently has it decided to start blowing up some central convection and start wrapping that around itself. I mean, you can see it's really doing, or attempting to do a really good job of that at this time, and you might also be able to make sense of a little bit of rotation as well happening around the centre, and that's backed up by surface observations with wind speeds rotating quite nicely into the centre of this system. I would love to see some wind observations right where this big brown patch of convectional cloud activity, which is intense thunderstorms, is. That would make me very happy indeed, because I do reckon that this system might actually have gale force winds, and as such it is still a shot of becoming a tropical cyclone. But if we take a look at the wind forecast here, I mean, it is a really, really limited shot at this time. This system is going to blow up and extend itself into the monsoon trough throughout the course of today, and it will weaken off substantially into tonight, into tomorrow morning. By tomorrow morning, you wouldn't even be able to make sense of where the system exactly is in terms of its location and whatnot. Now, this trough here, you can't really see it actually on the satellite picture. I mean, obviously you can't, but normally they do fire up some significant amounts of thunderstorms along them. The trough will eventually absorb this system here. It'll become just a very big, broad, low-pressure system before racing off towards New Zealand and New Caledonia. But yeah, if this system does want to make a shot of tropical cyclone status, which I'm probably giving about a 15 to 20% chance of right now, it really isn't a high chance, and of course no impacts or no major impacts expected on the central Queensland area, considering the system won't be getting much stronger than it is already. It only has about 6 to 8 hours to do so. Until about sundown tonight is when this system's going to start to encounter some very hostile conditions, and some terminal weakening is expected from here on out. All in all, a very impressive system. This tropical low has exceeded expectations on nearly every single level, especially on the rainfall level. I mean, we weren't expecting that much rainfall. The official agencies weren't expecting anywhere close to that amount of rainfall. I think Townsville at one point had 70 millimetres on the forecast, and it was a very uncertain 70 millimetres at that. So at least 5 times the rainfall has fallen for Townsville in some locations. 5 times the Townsville? 5 times the rainfall, rather, has fallen for Townsville, and in some adjacent communities, especially into the more hilly communities, about 8 to 9 times the rainfall has fallen out there, which again, fantastic to see. Has caused some significant flooding problems though, and is certainly leaving those roads and soil moisture values very, very soggy this morning. So again, take extra care if you are out and about. Just a perfect weekend in the lead up to Christmas to get things ready and stay in. Just let those rivers dry out a little bit more, because it certainly is going to be a slushy one out there just with the amount of rainfall that has fallen. Looking at rainfall accumulations into the near future, there isn't an awful lot on the cards until at least into the New Year period by the looks of things. There might be a little bit of rainfall developing along the central Queensland and the far northern Queensland coastline into the first week of 2025, but for the most part it's looking high and dry for the next 2 weeks, which is fantastic to see. I imagine a lot of people now really sick of the rainfall, especially the stuff that has already fallen. But yeah, looking long range out, you can see there isn't an awful lot on the cards until maybe a bit of a rainfall event from a onshore flow from a developing tropical low, which we'll talk about later on the forecast period, pipes up around sort of Friday or Saturday the 3rd or 4th of January respectively. But I mean, there's really nothing on the cards until then. In terms of the Christmas weather forecast as well for the central and the far northern reaches of Queensland, it is looking high and dry. A couple of thunderstorms here and there and some warm temperatures expected into the far north. Along the central coast, a couple of showers here and there, but then down into the southeast it's looking high and dry there once again. And speaking of the southeast, we do have a couple of thunderstorms that I would actually like to touch base with. We will see enhanced convective energy around the place in the southeast of Queensland on Monday. You can see convective available potential energy values. They are looking a little bit higher than what they normally would be around this time of the year, around sort of that 12 to 1500 joules per kilogram available in terms of the energy. I know that's an arbitrary number, but that does mean that values here are probably around sort of the high low to the low moderate sort of scope here. So there is the chance of some thunderstorms into the southeast of Queensland on Monday afternoon. They're definitely not going to be too crazy, probably nothing in the way of severe thunderstorms either, but I would expect the chance of a few severe thunderstorms into the southeast of Queensland on Monday, and then into the northeast of New South Wales, where they do have a higher chance of producing some problematic rainfall up there. But as you can see in this forecast, there is nothing crazy expected at all. I would like to see the convective forecast model, and we will take a look at that tomorrow morning in tomorrow morning's forecast update, just to get a full scope of the understanding in terms of the intensity of these thunderstorms, because sometimes the forecast can be very wrong and these thunderstorms can cause problems, but again, we will just have to wait and see. And then Christmas Eve expected to be a quiet one. Same deal with Christmas Day as well, nothing in the way of thunderstorms expected, and then we'll be waiting well and truly out towards sort of the end of 2024 and into the start of 2025 for our next severe thunderstorm outbreak, or just thunderstorm outbreak in general. I mean, it looks like we do have a shot of one maybe on the 30th or the 31st of December, but looking beyond that, it looks like the thunderstorms become a little bit more kind of fluent around the southeast of Queensland into the first week of 2025. So we will keep a close eye on things down there. A couple of storms possible on Monday, and then we're going to be waiting another week for the next thunderstorm outbreak. At this time, an interesting forecast, but it is looking pretty quiet across the southeast of Queensland, so it's great news for fine and sunny weather lovers. But if you're looking out for a good thunderstorm or 100 millimetres of rainfall across Queensland, there's nothing on the cards to report for the remainder of 2024, unfortunately. And then just for the remainder of the eastern states as well, there isn't an awful lot to talk about until those thunderstorms pipe up along the eastern states as well into the dying days of 2024. There isn't anything crazy in terms of rainfall. A couple of cold fronts expected to blow through, and then some warm temperatures expected to take hold around the Christmas period. Same deal with the south as well, the west as well. Nothing too crazy on the forecast there, so there isn't an awful lot worth talking about. And in terms of rainfall accumulations, you can see on the 14-day forecast here, the only standout rainfall accumulations are a small pocket into the northeast of New South Wales, and I believe that pipes up much later on into the forecast period. Yeah, it does. So we won't talk about that in today's forecast update just because of the unreliability of that. And then, of course, the tropical rainfall across the Northern Territory and WA, which you expect for this time of the year. So nothing crazy, nothing standing out like a sore thumb at all. Let's dive into those temperatures, because it is going to be a hot one in the lead up to the Christmas and New Year's period. So I would just like to start things off over in Western Australia. We're under an extreme heat warning once again in Perth, the second time in as many weeks. So the warm temperatures are expected to develop from today onwards. You can see Perth going for a top of 36, I believe, today. No, 37 actually on this forecast. And then temperatures are expected to be well into the 40s, up to about 46 as you get into the Murchison and the Gascoyne region. It's going to be even hotter tomorrow, up to 40 degrees for Perth. In fact, I dare I say might get a little bit hotter, especially across the northern suburbs, maybe up towards 41 or 42. And then deeper into the Wheatbelt, the Murchison, the Gascoyne, somewhere between sort of 43 and 47 degrees, especially the further north you get. And then more stock standard temperatures as you get further north into Western Australia's Pilbara and the Kimberley region. Still going to be really warm around sort of that 44 to 46 degree mark, but they are a little bit more accustomed to that kind of heat than we are down in the southwest. A little bit cooler across the Wheatbelt, but that's nothing in what's going to come through on Monday. I mean, we're looking at true heatwave conditions by Monday morning and Monday afternoon. Midday Monday, Perth is going to be 42 degrees, and it's going to be very warm pretty much right out of the gate here. You can see Perth at 8 o'clock 34 degrees, at 9 o'clock 37 degrees, so Monday is going to be a sweltering one to get your final preparations done for Christmas Day, and I would recommend probably postponing them on Monday, just having it as a day of rest, just considering the temperatures are going to be coming through. A lot of people, especially this time of the year, they do too many things at once across the Perth area, and heat stress does become a very hot topic of discussion, especially along the news. So don't make sure that you're not going to be one of those prompting those news articles on heat stress. 44 degrees deeper out into the Wheatbelt, especially up into the northern parts of the Wheatbelt. 45 or 46 into the Murchison region, a little bit cooler than what it's expected to be today and tomorrow there, but still very warm indeed. And then Christmas Eve, it's going to be a pretty humid top of 30 degrees by the looks of things with those southwesterly winds. So those temperatures are going to be low, but the humidity is going to be quite high, and as such, those feels like temperatures are going to be substantially higher than what you normally would get around this time of the year. Actually, humidity along the coastline of Perth around sort of that 60 to 70%, stark contrast to what's expected on Monday morning, where that humidity is going to be around sort of that 20 to 30%. So unfortunately, it's going to be a very sticky one. It's going to feel quite tropical indeed. indeed. And then just back to those temperature forecasts, so you can see it's going to be a pretty disappointing one on Christmas Day. A top of around 22 or 23 expected for Perth, with a chance of a couple of showers. It's going to be even colder into the southwest. Albany a top of 16. Inland out towards Mount Barker and Amallup, temperatures around 15 to 16 degrees expected to be the maximum. That is not an Australian Christmas at all. That's closer to a white Christmas than it is an Australian Christmas. I'll tell you what is going to be a white Christmas. Interior Australia, it's going to be white hot throughout interior Australia on Christmas Day. Temperatures around sort of that 44 to 45 degree mark, potentially a little bit warmer as you get into parts of interior Western Australia, especially into the Eucla and the South Interior districts. Adelaide a top of 34 on Christmas Day. That's nothing too crazy for them. It's going to get a little bit warmer as you get further out towards the west, at the top of 39 in Ceduna, 36 for Whyalla, and 37 for Port Augusta. Melbourne has been flip-flopping between either being very hot or relatively mild. They're expecting a top of 27, which is erring on the side of warm for Melbourne, especially as you get further north out towards Bendigo and Ballarat. The temperatures will be into the low to mid 30s out there, and it is going to be a bit of a sticky one as well around Melbourne. The humidity value is hovering at around sort of that 30 to 40% throughout the middle of the day. In fact, it could be a little bit warmer than that as well. So those temperatures are going to be a little bit stickier, a little bit higher than what the actual temperature is reporting on here. And then across into the eastern states as well, Sydney a cooler top of 23 degrees with a bit of an onshore flow expected there, so a couple of showers also possible into the Sydney area on Christmas Day. Nothing too crazy. They're expected to be for the most part light, but a couple of showers and plenty of cloud expected to be around the Sydney area. Brisbane a top of 28 for Christmas Day. It could be a little bit warmer than that, especially out towards the western suburbs. Nothing in the way of rainfall though by the looks of things, and it doesn't look like it's going to be overly humid either. Interior parts of Queensland somewhere between 39 and 43 degrees, especially as you get deeper out into the interior around sort of Longreach and Mount Isa. They're both gone for tops of 42, but for the most part temperatures looking to be stock standard and average on Christmas Day, especially along the central coast and into the far north of Queensland. Thankfully nothing crazy happening there. Darwin a stock standard day of 32 degrees, morning sunshine followed by afternoon thunderstorms. Nothing crazy to report on there. So all in all, it is a pretty calm Christmas across the major cities of Australia. It's going to be really warm across the interior, but there isn't any standout locations that are going to be especially warm. The only one really being Perth, which is going to be exceptionally cold for Christmas Day. Hobart as well, even though it's going to be colder than Perth, it's much closer towards the average there, a top of 18 degrees expected. The Perth temperature forecast is about 10 degrees below the average on Christmas Day, so very, very cold indeed, and even colder out to the southwest of WA as well, so not very pleasant indeed. I wasn't exactly looking forward to 22 degrees on the forecast, but at the end of the day, we've had some stinking hot Christmases the last couple of years, so I will take it. That'd be much more pleasant to have to spend Christmas with maybe a little bit of warmth added to the room as opposed to a very much a struggling air conditioning on Christmas Day. So again, that is some good news there on the forecast, that it isn't going to be stinking hotter across the Perth metro area, but I mean, it could probably be a little bit warmer than 22 degrees. Like I said, closer to a white Christmas than it is to a proper Australian warm Christmas, with a little bit of rainfall actually expected to come through in the afternoon and evening hours of Christmas Day across the Perth metro area. So we will wait and see what actually does happen there. And then looking much further out into the forecast period across the Coral Sea and then over into the tropical waters of Western Australia as well, we could see a weak tropical low spin up somewhere offshore from Western Australia into the dying days of 2024. If you've been watching the last couple of videos, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This system here not expected to be a good chance of development, but it is still about sort of that 10 to 15% chance this time, so it is still worth taking a look at. If it does develop, it is not expected basically in any lifetime to get to a significant intensity. Probably category 1 status would be the highest that it gets to, and even then that's a really big long shot at this time. Western Australia, in short, not expecting tropical cyclone impacts over the next 14 days, and yeah, like I said, that system there, it is a big stretch. You can tell that I'm finding stuff to talk about now for this forecast update, because that is really not a system worth concerning about or worrying about whatsoever. And then longer out into 2025, you can see by the 4th day of 2025, nothing else expected on the forecast offshore from Western Australia, which is a bit unusual. This time of the year, you normally expect tropical lows to be developing basically on a week by week period, so maybe something will come through into the second week of 2025, but at this time doesn't look like anything's on the forecast, at least not on the short range forecast. We will keep close tabs on things though. Over in the Coral Sea, which is always the active place around this time of the year into the New Year's period, you can see some kind of tropical low spin up is possible into the New Year's period. Something could spin up in the Solomon Sea sort of around the 29th or the 30th. Again, a very slim chance of development, and I'm very much pulling things out to talk about in this forecast update here, but then later on into the forecast period, we'll likely see 2 individual spin-ups, and that's again reciprocated between other forecast models. So the GFS was calling for it in yesterday's iteration, just in a little bit of a different location. You can see the GFS calling for a tropical low offshore from Thursday Island, and then the other one outside of Fiji. The Eastern WF calling for the tropical low south of Port Moresby offshore from the Cape York Peninsula, very close to where the GFS is calling for theirs, and then the other tropical low outside of Vanuatu. So it looks like the forecast will heat up a little bit as we get into the New Year's period, but at this time it doesn't look like there's any strong signals for strong tropical cyclones, and certainly nothing going for the Australian mainland as well. So if you're concerned about tropical cyclone impacts into the first couple of weeks of 2025, I nearly said 2024, been saying that for the last year, but if you're looking out for tropical cyclone impacts in the next couple of weeks, there really isn't anything on the forecast, not even the long-range forecast is suggesting anything major at this time. And of course, if that changes, I will let you know straight away, but there is absolutely nothing worth panicking about or worrying about at this time. On that note, that basically does it for the Australian weather wrap-up. If you have any questions or comments, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. If you want a detailed forecast for your exact location as well, please do let me know in the comment section down below, and I'd be more than happy to help you out there. Thank goodness the rainfall is dying off across Queensland. I don't think they could take another day of the rainfall rates they were getting, so very happy to hear that. And if you've got photos, videos, or if you've got a weather report, then please just send it to my email as well. That's found in the channel description. I'd be very happy to see and air these videos on these videos, given your permission as well. So please do consider sending me an email. That is all that I have time for today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and again, I could not run the show without them, but that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.